Start. We are starting Future Law webinars. This is first in series together with Senne Mennes, co-founder and COO of ClauseBase, Belgium-based multinational legal tech company that provides solution for drafting of contracts. And he will be telling us his story about his transition from a lawyer to a legal tech founder, and will provide us with information about how different career paths may help actually to make this transition happen. So please applaud for our host today and for our speaker, and we are starting. Let's start from this question. What specific steps did you take to transition from being a lawyer to a legal tech founder? And how did you manage the financial aspects of this stage as well? It's quite important because many people do not risk to make this transition happen exactly because of this. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Valentin, and thank you for that very kind introduction. So indeed, I used to be a lawyer. I worked in the Brussels office of DLA Piper in their intellectual property and technology department. Worked there for a couple of years, and incidentally, that is also where I met my co-founder. So my co-founder was a software developer before he became a lawyer. Also worked with DLA Piper. Had actually worked at DLA Piper as a lawyer, but that was years before I arrived. Then was involved as a sort of independent party on a large project that we were doing, on which I was also staffed as a junior lawyer. And so we had a chance already to work together quite intensely for about a year and a half. Developed a very good personal and professional click, which I think reason why I'm highlighting that, I think it's also important to say that that jump for me was significantly easier to make, or at least it seemed significantly less daunting, less terrifying, because I knew I had already had the opportunity to work with my co-founder. And I already saw that we had, a good rapport. I already saw that he was incredibly clever. I already saw what was the MVP, the minimum viable product of ClauseBase at the time. So I had a very good feeling in general. I had that sort of ramp up period where I could kind of develop a sense of the person, a sense of the product, and that made it significantly easier to make that jump, or at least it was much less of a jump into the unknown than maybe it would be otherwise. And then as for it is a risky jump to make. For me personally, at the time, I was kind of done being a lawyer. Was already looking for something a little bit different, but then I had a couple of interviews with other law firms, with an in-house legal team even. But I always felt like I'm just jumping from one situation into the other, and it's basically going to be the exact same thing. So didn't really bite on any of these opportunities that came along. And so I was already kind of in a mindset where, I knew what I didn't like about being a lawyer. I mean, there's tons of things, by the way, that I do like, but I imagine we'll get into those as well. I knew what I didn't like. I knew what I wanted out of my next job, and the ownership and the kind of building on something that's here to stay. That's definitely what motivated me to make the decision that I did. Like, as a lawyer, you draft your contracts, you draft your memos, you draft whatever document or advice that you need to draft for your clients, but then you kind of send it out, and then it just vanishes. It's not really there anymore. I mean, sure, sometimes you build upon what you did previously, but in most of the stuff that I worked on, it just it entered my desk, I did some things with it, it left my desk, and that was it. And I would never see any of this stuff again. And that to me was a little bit, I mean, that didn't really motivate me as much. I was much more motivated by actually building something. And obviously, I saw that opportunity with ClauseBase. When I did get the chance to then actually start along with my co-founder, right? Like I said earlier, he had already been developing a kind of MVP of ClauseBase, and yeah, significantly less risk again because of that. So that was I think a big caveat to already make. I in some ways, yes, it was a risky decision, but in some ways I had it a lot easier, I think, than a lot of other founders have. And as for the sort of financial side of things, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I did,
really, you bootstrap this startup, you know. It's
yeah,
it's it's
yeah.
it's amazing. Nowadays, it's quite rare thing to find that someone could bootstrap a legal tech startup from scratch. And now it's been several years in your successful venture with great revenue, and you providing really a useful and necessary tool for lawyers. That's amazing.
Yeah,
How did you
thank
do
you. Yeah,
this?
indeed. Yeah, we made the decision very early on not to get capital. In hindsight, this was absolutely the right decision, although it didn't feel like that at the time. We burned through our entire savings in pretty much a year in our first year in business. Um, and only afterwards did we start to kind of climb out of that over a very long, or at least what felt like a very long, very excruciating time. But the reason why for us it made a lot of sense to do that is because when we launched our MVP, we had certain assumptions about the market that some of them were proven right, some of them were proven wrong. And we kind of had to learn over time that we had to make significant tweaks. We had to make adjustments. We also kind of pivoted our product line a little bit in 2022. And it's really that decision, or actually late 2021, I should say. It's really that decision that has made ClauseBase into what it is today. That is something that we had to learn on our own. I think if we had raised a ton of money, there would have been a lot of pressure on us to succeed straight away. And I don't think we could have done it at that point. And I think we would have gone the way that most venture, let's face it, right? I mean, there's a lot of successful venture-backed startups out there, but even more startups that just couldn't make it happen with all of that investor pressure that's there.
Yes,
I think we would have
generally one
gone
in
that
one
way.
in 10 startups fail, and that's a normal practice in
I think it's
business.
even 1 in 10 succeed. So 9 in 10 fail.
Yes, I'm sorry. I've
Yeah.
been wrong a little bit here. Okay, that's a really inspiring story. But what would you say about alternative career paths? How do roles such as corporate counsel, compliance officer, legal operations professional, legal engineer might help in this transition, and how it can benefit your career as a lawyer?
Yeah, absolutely. So my career is a little bit, or my career path is a little bit unconventional, I will say. But being a lawyer based in Belgium, Belgium is still fairly traditional. I mean, it's especially since 2019, when we really got started. It's grown a lot since then, but especially at the time, law firms were pretty much entirely consisting of lawyers with a couple of administrative staff and things like that. And so for me, it was very surprising when I first started striking out as a co-founder of ClauseBase to visit law firms in the UK, and when we got our first like UK based clients, and in the US as well, by the way. We saw that in those jurisdictions, people are generally much farther along. Like the kind of growth, the kind of like digitalization, if you want to call it that we've seen in Belgium over the past couple of 5 years, that already existed 5 years ago in the UK, in the US, in some of these jurisdictions where there's just more happening on that front. And indeed, the one thing that I noticed at that time was there are a lot more different kinds of roles in those organizations compared to what we were seeing in mainland Europe, and especially again in Belgium.
But
The main
what skills from legal backgrounds can actually be most valuable in this context in order to found a proper working venture that would actually serve the interests of the legal industry and that would be valuable for the legal industry? Because a lot of startups are being done, but not all of them are actually needed. So it was a quite precise shot from your side. What skills, what actually helped you to build it?
Yeah, I think just having that background knowledge of what the process actually looks like, what the problem is that you're trying to solve, I think that is by far, the number one um, advantage that we got from our own legal background. Yes, we had to kind of like pivot along the way because we had to find out more and more about our customer base, but we knew the work. And I think that's also why you see these statistics sometimes where the average age of a successful founder is 45. And I don't think that's coincidental. I mean, we're a little bit younger, but I think it's from that you can learn, you can see that it's obvious that those successful founders, they've been in a sector, in a business, in an industry for a while, and they kind of identify where things go wrong. And of course, anyone can kind of see that at a surface level, and anyone can have that explained to them by those people at a surface level. But unless you've really lived it, and unless you can, also build your product to really fit that sort of those pain points that you yourself have experienced, I don't think you can translate that as deeply as if you don't have that experience.
Yeah, and that's true. Uh, what about technical skills? Legal tech founders should not only be wise in the legal industry and be quite knowledgeable in how the processes are going on, but should also be, let's say, tech savvy guy who understands that this technical solution would be suitable for certain needs of the legal industry, of lawyers, of legal teams, etc. How do you find the proper technical skills that are most crucial to learn and to acquire in order to be successful at this path?
Yeah. Well, again, purely speaking from my own point of view, again, I got a little bit lucky in the sense that my co-founder is the technical brain behind ClauseBase. Um, and like I said earlier, he used to be a software developer before he became a lawyer. So he already had those technical skills, and also had deep experience of the sector, but also the problems that, especially in our case, like legal drafting faces, or that lawyers face when they are drafting legal documents. That is something where I think a lot can go wrong indeed. For us, we had that good fortune that we had someone like Martin, my co-founder, who when he has to make the kind of translation from the industry problem, or the issue that you're trying to solve, into a technical solution, in many, we've seen that a bunch of times with many different startups. That's basically one person trying to explain something to another person. And there's a lot that can go wrong, a lot that can get lost in the translation between those two people, because on one hand you have a lawyer, on the one hand you have a technical person, and they speak in completely different vocabulary. They can speak, they use the same vocabulary for completely different things, and so that's a real risk there. With Martin, with my co-founder, that translation was from one side of his brain to the other side of his brain.
But
That was
what
that.
would you suggest to other people who are not that lucky as you are? For example,
Yeah.
maybe working in a diverse environment with different expats from different areas, not only legal areas, but also some business areas. What would you suggest?
Well, there's a couple of different routes that you can take, right? So I've seen a lot of very successful tech founders who had like 6, 7, 8 years career as a lawyer and then retrained. They took coding courses and things like that, and obviously, you know, there's a certain level of experience that you're never going to get, but at the very least you have that solid foundation. And you know, you can also bring in other people after maybe building like an MVP. You can bring in other people that can build on, you know, what you've already been able to create, and I've seen that work with other founders also here in Belgium quite a few times already. That's one path. Another path is that indeed you find a suitable co-founder or like a technical brain. That's also, again, something that we've seen work. There are plenty of very good legal tech startups out there right now that were founded originally by lawyers without technical skills. They managed to find a good technical partner. There we go. And made that work. Again, the challenge there, I think, is making that translation that I was talking about. But that's not an insurmountable challenge. That is something that you can do. It's just and I think, Valentin, you can maybe say more about that. It just requires to have very clear lines of communication.
Yeah, that's a great experience for sure, and I'm really with you with this. Okay, but is there anything else that actually played a crucial role in your success? Was it some resource, some networking opportunities, some innovative solutions that inspired you? Uh, how did you identify those inefficient aspects in traditional legal processes, and how you identified and addressed them with your tech-driven solution?
Yeah. So how did we identify those issues? Well, obviously that was just years of experience doing the experiencing the problems that we were solving. That's there's no real substitute, I think, for that kind of experience. Now, as for your the second part of your question, like you know, what was the sort of yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to say is there is no real magical sort of single solution, this one silver bullet that we found, I think. A lot of it, there's no like magic recipe, at least none that I found so far. Most of it is just being able to persevere through the uncertainty that you have of, you know, did I get it right? And again, to be honest, we didn't get it right when we just started out. But then iterating on that, learning from that, pivoting as is necessary. I think that especially was the number one reason why we're still around today and why we've gotten as far as we have, is just, yeah, being able to continue being in the arena, as they say, even when it is extraordinarily difficult at times to do that.
Absolutely. But still, what about business?
Yeah.
Did something in your environment influenced you that enough so you would be able to sell your product? Because you know it's kind of difficult situation in the legal industry to sell to lawyers something they think sometimes they do not need. You know, how did you manage to do this? How you actually convinced your target audience that you are doing the right thing, and that is actually needed for their needs?
Mm.
It's a crucial moment for many future and past legal tech founders, at which many of them fail.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, the product speaks for itself a lot. So I think you know, those lawyers that currently do use our product, I do feel like at the very least a large amount of them do really feel that it comes from a place where you know, we've been there and we've experienced those problems. That's one side of the thing. I will also say that you know, there have been a couple of big evolutions in the world since 2019 when we started. We had COVID in 2020, where a lot of like digital transformation, I think, was sped up significantly compared to if COVID hadn't happened. I think a lot of lawyers, like at the time when I was still a lawyer, I quit in 2018. That was, it was, I never had a video call. I still use the phone a lot. I had like a dedicated landline phone, and you know, like even in that year and a half collaboration that I had with my co-founder back when I was still at DLA, we never actually saw each other. So the first time we met, we had to like explain to each other what we looked like, that kind of thing. That wasn't that just didn't happen. And then all of a sudden COVID happens and everyone is forced to adopt, you know, tools like Microsoft Teams. All of a sudden, a lot of these software purchases were just becoming a little bit more ingrained. So that was a big factor as well. And then in more recent memory, just ChatGPT and all of the stuff that generative AI has unleashed. I think the realization has set in a lot more with lawyers that something needs to happen, that you know the old days are over, and I've seen that also when I've heard that when I talk to some of our clients, some of our prospective clients, a couple of months ago already, but it's still a conversation that stuck with me quite a bit. I had a conversation on expectations with a large a smaller law firm here in Belgium. And basically the lawyer said, yeah, it used to be that if I got back to people within like a week, or, you know, for basic requests and things like that, if I got back to people within, at the very least within the week, that would be fine. If I go, and nowadays when you know, people, when I get back to them within the week, they have like comments on that, and they feel like the expectation model, or the window of what an acceptable delivery is, has shrunk from like a week to a day or two. So more from a day long model to a week long model, that we're shifting. All of those issues, or all of those evolutions compounded with each other, are starting to make lawyers realize more than ever that you know, this is stuff that they do need to be actively looking at, and that you know, you don't want to get left behind. You also see a lot of your you know, rival firms, or your or other legal teams. If you're an in-house lawyer, you see a lot of them jump on that boat, and then it's very hard to stay on shore.
Yeah, and that's might be also the reason why legal tech products are better accepted and perceived on a bigger market rather than on a small market, because expectations of clients, and as we might understand, there are much more clients within the bigger market rather than the small one. Expectations of clients are rising. They want to have prompt responses. They want to have your contract to be made yesterday, etc. And you need to be in line with all those expectations if you want to save human-centric legal services delivery. And
Yeah.
that's probably one of the ways to help
Yeah,
lawyers.
you do make a very good point there, because indeed, you know, we have clients in pretty much all the kind of layers of law firm sizes. You know, we work with solo law firms, and we work with some of the largest law firms in the world. But indeed, the number one kind of same common element between all of them is that they primarily work for larger clients, or you know, we as far as I can like remember off the top of my head, or can think of off the top of my head, we don't work pretty much with any firms that do exclusively work for individual people. Usually it's for companies, or for like you know, large organizations and things like that. And indeed, though, those expectations are a lot bigger, or a lot more demanding. Maybe that's not yet the case with just, you know, average you know, consumers of legal services. Yeah, that might definitely have a part to play in that.
Yes, and that's correct. Well, that's an amazing story indeed. But how do you balance legal and your tech solution? Because there are also legal developments, regulatory aspects of different kind. Do you have issues with this within your product? Because if certain processes, legal processes, are automated, how do you ensure that the one who relies on it would not use it against you at some point of time?
Yeah, I mean, we're not too concerned about that being used against, but indeed compliance is a big issue. And it's funny how when I was still a lawyer, compliance would be I was a GDPR lawyer. That was a lot of what I did was just providing advice on those topics, drafting documentation and things like that. And at the time, you really look at it from your own lens and you think like, oh, okay, easy billables, right? That kind of stuff. But now that I'm kind of in the business seat, it's indeed a completely different experience, and it can be a little bit frustrating because the regulatory landscape evolves a lot, and there's a lot of red tape that comes with it. There's a couple of new developments like Dora and NIS, and obviously we're also ISO certified. So those are it's not like a regulation, I know, but it's also again compliance stuff that came along. Those are things that yeah do take up a lot of time. I do think though that if you're we have the good fortune again that we come from that sort of line of legal work. So we're also able to kind of gauge a little bit like, okay, what do we need to do? How do we do it? We've done that before when we were still lawyers. We can do it on our own, basically. Again, something where if you're bootstrapped and then you still have to get legal advice, obviously that's very costly. You probably don't want to spend that kind of money on it. Too again something where we do have that good fortune that we are in a position where we can do a lot of that stuff ourselves, or at the very least where we can kind of we have a good network where with lawyers. If there's something that we can't find for ourselves or we can't do it for ourselves, we have a good network where we can like occasionally come in and see if we can find someone who can do this for us very quickly, very easily. But it is a challenge and one that drains a lot of time.
What would you suggest to future legal tech founders? What advice would you give to lawyers considering the same career shift to legal tech as you did?
It's a very good question. I think it would I would like to say, you know, think very clearly about your plan and like how you're going to approach it before you start. But in all honesty, if I had done that, if I, had, I obviously I gave it a lot of thought before I made the decision. But I think there is so much that can go wrong that if you really visualize all of that, you're going to scare yourself out of the opportunity. And that's also something that I think the NVIDIA CEO recently said, Jensen Huang. He basically said something along the lines of like, had I known what I know now, I would never have done it. Which is, of course, I mean, I think it's a little bit facetious because he's on top of the world with NVIDIA right now. But yeah, it is tricky, and I think you don't have to scare yourself. I know we're Halloween themed, but you don't have to scare yourself out of the opportunity. I think that would be a shame. But knowing what you're getting into is a big plus. And also being aware that it's a marathon and not a sprint, that you come into this and then learn how to develop and grow and market and things like that. You learn tons of new skills that you just have to pick up as you go. As long as you're mentally prepared for it. That's what the situation is going to be like, and you're at peace with being in that kind of nonstop growth um, uh, um, kind of environment, then I think if you can check all of those boxes, then definitely that's the way to go.
Thanks. That's a real spirit. It's my dog.
Ah, okay,
Yes, he protects the house.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. I see an interesting statement here by Stefan,
Mhm.
quoting, "A client that wants stuff that quick, they get shoddy work. There is also the point of educating your client." What do you think of this?
Is that in relation to the Stefan, to the quote that so it's like the
It's
comment
it's
that I
it's
made
in
about?
relation to the question that I raised about that
Yeah, the
many
expectation.
clients are demanding, they want your work to be done yesterday, and that such legal tech products as yours can actually help achieving this.
Yeah, no, I agree with the point of educating clients. I also think that, one of the perennial problems of legal services is like if we had the time, we could do everything perfectly. And lawyers are by nature perfectionists. So that's what you're naturally inclined to. Fortunately, that time isn't there. And I think also a big element of that delivery expectation window shrinking, I think um indeed in education or misunderstanding what legal service delivery is about, or what the creation of the particular deliverable is about. I think that also has a big role to play. In a lot of times, if you're going to a law firm, then it's maybe a black box already, or at least you as an in-house lawyer, for example, right? You don't have the necessary skills to gauge, is this a good document? I'm just kind of have to I just have to trust that the firm that I'm working for, based on their reputation, based on maybe previous work that they've done for me, I just have to trust that it is good. And if that is the situation, if you do have a sort of black box kind of, you don't know if it's good or not, and if you're not an expert on the field, then it can be very tempting to look at a tool like ChatGPT, ask it to provide whatever document or whatever advice that you want. You're not in a position to assess whether that result is any good or not, or whether maybe you can't really immediately get like the fine-tune points out of it. But it's tempting to see that and then think, oh yeah, ChatGPT can do anything. And if I can ask this question to ChatGPT and it gives me a response in 30 seconds, and you take a week, what's going on here? I think that obviously that's wrong, but it's very much a kind of perception that lives with people, that there's still so many people out there, for example, that don't know that ChatGPT can hallucinate, or that it doesn't work as a database, that it kind of associates a lot of words together rather than just pulling out some file from their vast database that contains the right answer. And that sort of problem is also education in nature. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true actually, and it's really tempting to get your questions answered so quickly. That's why some people really think that ChatGPT or some other AI agent is now their lawyer actually, and they really rely on those. Answers and the information that the machine gives. But it's a question about understanding how it actually works. Currently, at least currently, it only predicts the next word. So it's a programming machine, nothing else. It doesn't think, and it's quite risky to rely on the information of the machine that actually does not analyze information properly.
The big problem
So
is that it delivers its answers so confidently. And
yeah,
so it's so easy for people to think like, oh, I don't know the answer, but clearly ChatGPT.
Especially or if on the contrary, a lawyer that you ask a question from is so not so inconfident,
It depends on this or
his
this.
voice is shaking, he doesn't know the answer right away. That's really tempting to turn to ChatGPT and proceed with him.
Yeah.
Yes, that's really an interesting point as well. Okay, we are starting with Q&A session, and we have a first question. It's from Carol. Since we are on Halloween, you share a personal terror story anecdote that you have experienced during your co-founder journey or from before as a traditional lawyer. Do you have one?
So I mean, there's tons of stuff that happened, obviously, both as a co-founder, as a lawyer. There's
I
even
can
stuff that I
help
can't talk
you.
about. I think one of the strangest experiences, it's not so much a horror story, I will say, because I was a junior lawyer at the firm, but one of the strangest experiences that I had is that you may remember in 2017 or 16, I think it was, DLA Piper was hit by this huge cyber attack, ransomware. And so all of a sudden, like the entire firm's network was ransomed, was completely unavailable. And so I couldn't access any of my files. I couldn't access any of my emails. I was just basically not doing anything at the firm. But of course, excuse me, a lot of my clients were, or a lot of the files that I was working on, they were very time sensitive. And it's a very peculiar sensation because on the one hand, it's literally out of your hands. There's nothing you can do. I mean, the only thing you can do is hope that IT gets to the problem on time. Um, and so that's a little bit liberating. But on the other hand, it's hard to shake that stress. It's hard to shake that feeling that you're letting clients down and things like that. Those couple of days when the network was completely down, that's also the only time I was ever able to clock out at 5 p.m. So that was the good side of it. But I will say that is, yeah, that's definitely a very crazy situation to experience. For me, again, I was a little bit lucky there because I didn't have a lot of litigation pending, but there were a lot of colleagues of mine that had litigation pending that they had very strict, clear deadlines. You just couldn't access anything that they had worked on. Yeah, that's one example.
That's why we should apply diverse approaches towards our file systems. Because I also had two hacker attacks during my legal career back then. And both times it was that a hacker actually blocked all the files, not on the local computers, but on the intranet that we used at that
Hmm.
time. And if once we've been able to actually restore everything ourselves, because we had a backup just one day before the hack had happened, but the second time we had to pay to a hacker, so he would actually provide us with instructions how to deblock all those files.
No.
And it was actually the work of 25 years, not just
Wow.
the whole system, file system
Yeah.
was the work of 25 years. So it was actually a nightmare because we had to rely on that this particular hacker is a good guy and he will actually provide us with those instructions once we have paid.
Yeah. And what's stopping him from just not giving you
Yeah,
anything,
just
right?
just just taking money and go away, and that's it. For this reason, we should be taking care of cybersecurity and be sure that our file systems are safe, do backups and use different tools as well in order to be on the safe side if anything happens. So yeah, that's a nightmare of today, cyber attacks. Okay, that's great. Any other questions? Please ask. If no questions, then we should thank Senne Mennes for this exciting story. Lots of insights, and that's truly amazing what you did with your company. Full respect from my side.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. And let's keep in touch and see each other on the next webinar. Goodbye.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.